Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. Or in the original Hebrew Aramaic, Yeshua min Nitzeret of Nazareth, Melech, King, Yehudim of the Jews. Notice how many people, you see it here, it's of Messiah, and how many people in the Bible have more than one name? You have Simon, but it's not just Simon or Shimon, his real name. Simon Peter, Simon Bar-Jonah, Simon the tanner, Simon the zealot, Simon the leper, Simon the magician or sorcerer, Simon the Cyrene or Cyrenian. So if you were around in Bible times, you wouldn't have a regular last name. You would be named in this way. But you do live in Bible times because God has not ended the book of Acts. We are still with the God of the Bible. So what is your biblical name? What is your biblical surname? In the sight of heaven, who are you? We have an eternal surname. What will it be? What will it be? What is your biblical name? And what will you be known in heaven? What will you be known as? On one hand, again, they were named by their fathers or your past. So you have a family name. You have that, but what is the identity that you're in? Because if you are born again, you have a new fatherhood. You have a new childhood. If you're born again, your ultimate father is God. So you are son or daughter of God. And what identity are you living? Are you living by the old identity, that's the old past, or are you living by the new identity, Bar? If you're living by the new, I am a child of God. And if I'm a child of God, I'm not a child of anger anymore. The Bible speaks of children of anger. I'm not a child of sin. I'm not a child of shame. I'm a child of love. That's my identity. I'm not a son of darkness or a daughter of darkness. That's not my identity anymore. Maybe it was my identity. But who you are, which are you going to go by? Your old identity or your new identity? Which name are you going by? God says, I'll give you a new name. Child of compassion, child of holiness. Am I a child of the flesh? Am I living by the flesh or am I living by the Spirit? Child of the Spirit. Which are you? Which do you believe? Which identity do you believe? The old or the new? Who is your ultimate father? You have a father on earth. You honor your father on earth. But what is your ultimate identity? You have to choose every day what identity you're going to live. You're going to live as the old person, or you're going to live by the identity God gives you. God has given you an identity, but it's up to you to live by it. Believe it. That's why Paul says, I pray you live by the high calling that God's given you in a manner worthy, meaning you got a choice to live one way or the other. It says, crucify the flesh. What name do you want to characterize your life in heaven? What you did on earth, because what you do on earth links to what is forever. Store up your treasure in heaven. Who are you going to be in heaven? What else do we see makes a biblical surname? Your trade, or what you do. What you do. Now you might say, well, I'm a plumber, I'm a garbage man, I'm a doctor, I'm a minister, I'm a lawyer. But the eyes of heaven are not looking at that so much. There's another kind of profession that the eyes of heaven look at, the profession of your faith, the vocation. You know what vocation means? We think, well, it's a career. Vocation means calling. Calling. What you do. You're defined by what you do here. This was a man who was a tanner because he tanned. This was a man who was a carpenter because he built. What do you do with your life, with your energy? What do you do? It adds up to something. What would your name be? Really, seriously, what would your name be? Would you be Mary the gossiper, if we're going to be real? Sam the complainer, Joe the couch potato who watches television all day, or whatever it is, Simon the one who lived his whole life for money and for success, or the one who was actually one way here and another way at home. What is it? Arnold, the herder of his wife. God sees it all. What's your identity? The manipulator, the self-centered, the one who watches pornography. The God sees it. The one who never did what he was called to do. Never rose to the calling. The one who never lived the life she knew she was supposed to live. What's your identity? What identity are you building forever? Because the only time we have is now for forever. Which one are we? What is our identity? Or what will it be? You have this guy called William the Conqueror. Well, the Bible says you're more than a conqueror. Is that your real identity? Are you really living it? What will it be? Will it be, are you really victorious? Are you living in God's will and his victory? The one who rose to the calling, that's what you want to be. The one who always gave, the generous, Bill the generous. The one who always hoped, the one who kept going, the one who repented, the one who stepped out in faith. That's what you want to be your surname. The one who maybe they gossip, but now they repented. They said, I'm not going to do that anymore. Maybe they were a slave to pornography. They said, now no more. The one who persevered, the one who used to be carnal, but now is spiritual. The forgiver, Charles, the giver of mercy, the doer of righteousness. You've already lived a certain way. But what is the identity that you're storing up in heaven? Biblical names are about what the people did regularly. You will be known, your identity is what you do regularly, day in, day out. What's your life? What's your habit? What's your lifestyle? It's not just what you do once and you have an experience. It's what you're doing at home, what you're doing every day. You fell in that, there's encouragement. You fell in that sin, but that sin is not your identity. Unless you stay there, unless you dwell in it all the time. Now, if you dwell in this sin all the time, it becomes part of your identity. Do you want to be named by that? Do you want to be known by that sin? No. Heaven sees. But if you don't stay in the sin, then it's not your identity. And it's not who God made you to be anyway. It's not your name. If you persevere in the good, that's what you become on earth. The incredible thing, it's not what you fell into. It's not what you messed up in. It's not what you failed in. It's what you made your resolve to walk in God's way. It will not be your sin that will identify you if you get up and keep going. It will not be the failure that identifies you if you get up now and follow God. It will not be your past. It's what you choose in God to go. Now you want to see that? What did David do? David fell in adultery. He fell in murder. He murdered the husband of the one against whom he committed adultery and suffered many consequences. But what is David called? He's not called David the adulterer. He's not called David the murderer. He's called David the man after God's heart. God didn't look at all that stuff in the end because David didn't stay in it and didn't practice it. He moved on. He got up. He asked for forgiveness. He repented and moved on with God, and that's what God looked at. All the great people, if you have enough about them, anyone who's got a lot of text about them in the Bible, they all messed up. Every one of them messed up, but they're not named by it. They're not identified by it. Neither will you be. Don't stay in that sin. Get up, and move forward. The interesting thing is, you do as you are, who you are in God, but you also, there's another part of it. You actually also become as you do as well. There's a double thing here. God works mercy. The thing is, you may not be a merciful person, but as you start showing mercy, and you become. You may be cowardly, but as you practice overcoming the fear, you become courageous. You actually become what you're meant to be. When you practice it daily, you're changed who you are. What else were they named by? What is your biblical name? Your nature. Your nature. Again, James the just, James the righteous, known for righteousness. Barnabas, known for compassion, it seems. They did studies on people, and they found, scientific studies, that when they saw their personality as a kid or a teenager, and they traced them throughout their whole life. And by the end of their life, the personality was different from when it was as a teenager. There are certain traits that may stay the same, but people actually do change throughout their life. I don't think the way I did when I was a teenager, but all the more I'm born again and you're born again. If you're born again, all the more you're changing. You can choose whom you will become when you go by what God said and you go by the new self. You practice it. It starts becoming your nature. You know, for instance, you might be really angry when you're driving and you blow up and you say that's who you are. But practice being nice in the traffic jam. Practice letting people in and give a big smile to them. And it starts actually affecting you. You know, when you give to somebody, when you're generous from your heart, it actually starts changing you. They did a simple experiment. They told people to smile, and you know what happened? You smile, oh, stupid little thing like that. They smiled, it actually became happy. It actually affected their blood levels, all sorts of things. Barnabas is called the encourager. We don't know that he always was encouraging. He might have I'm sure he had bad days. I mean, he did. He had a fight with Paul. He had bad days. But overall, he chose to encourage. And it became him. Peter, the rock. The guy was unstable. I mean, rocky, not a rock. He was always, that's up and down, up and down, up and down. I mean, he tried. He had faith. He was seeking to please God, and he gets credit for that. But he was up and down all the time. But when you read when you read the letters of Peter, you don't see that. When you read 1 Peter and 2 Peter, you don't see a rocky person. You don't see somebody who's going all over the place. You see somebody who is at peace, who is arrived, who's stable, who's centered, who's a rock. Why? Because he kept going with God and he became what God named him to become in the first place. God loves giving names that don't fit you. He gives names that you rise to. Abraham, father of the many, he was not the father of the many. He was impossible. He became it. And you go on and on and on and on, and all these people are named what they were not, but what they became. Keep going. Even though you mess up, don't let your life be defined by what's not right. Give it to God and then get on with it. Don't dwell on it. Don't dwell in it. Move on with God. Peter never gave up, and as he kept going, he became what God said. And all the rest, David messed up, Moses messed up, Abraham messed up, they all messed up. But they became what God called them to be. God knows, he says, I'll give you a new name. God knows that name, we don't. But none of these people, they were all imperfect, but none of them let themselves be defined by what was not of God. You fall, you remember that commercial? That woman, I've fallen and I can't get up. Well, that's how many of you have been. You fall and I can't get up. You're so taken by the fall, but we are supposed to be taken by the rise. We have power to rise. That's what it's about. It's what they became. Paul said, I have not obtained it yet, but one thing I do, I press on for the upward prize in Messiah. He said, I'm not there yet, but I'm pressing on to become. Your name in God has not given you a name that you are. You put your name in there, the one who fails. That's not your name in God. Maybe your name in the flesh, but not. You're not to be called the bitter. It's not the unloved. It's not the rejected. It's not the angry. It's not the divided. That's who you were. Some of you choose your sin. You were one or the other. But that's not who you are in God. That's not who God created you to be. That's not who you are redeemed by the blood of Jesus to become. It's what you hold on to, what you believe, and what you persevere in the will of God. That's what you become. John the loving, Susan the faithful, Bill the victorious, Jane the woman of peace. Earlier this week, I was in Dallas. I was speaking on Daystar, and a man came to pick me up for the television thing, and he's an African-American driver, and he says, oh, I said, I'm Jonathan. He says, I'm Pharisee. I said, Pharisee? I said, I'm not sure I heard it right. What did we say? He says, no, Pharisee. I said, you're a believer? He said, yes, and I'm Pharisee. And I'm thinking about this. I'm driving. I'm thinking, I turned and said, you've probably gotten a lot of flack for that name. And people saying, stop acting like a Pharisee. You're acting like you're a Pharisee. He said, yeah, I do all the time. I said, but you know what? The name Pharisee is not really a bad name. It comes from it's really a translation of the Hebrew name, Perashim, which means the separated ones. He said, I know that. That's what I'm living by. I'm a holy one for God. He was choosing not to go with a bad identity, with a fleshly identity. Choosing, I'm going with God's identity. I'm one of God's separated ones. I may not feel holy, but I'm going by it in God, by the blood of Messiah. Choose whom you will be in God. That's part of who God called you to be. Your name in God, your identity is not based on one thing that happened in your life. It's based on your journey. Where you going? Where you going? Where every day I'm going to go there. Like Paul said, I press on, I press on, I press on. And then this part of it, it's kind of fascinating. The biblical surname, which we said also was often about where you're from, your origin. And we saw Saul of Tarsus, Mary Magdalene, Jesus of Nazareth. What's your surname of where you come from? Where you come from? Jack of Hackensack, Joe of Bayonne. Where do you come from? Mary of Englewood. There are many of you who were actually probably born in Englewood Hospital. I wasn't even from New Jersey. I was from New York State, but I was born in Englewood Hospital. Englewood. That's my place of birth. That's many years. But your hometown. It could be your hometown or where you're from, where you grew up. That would be your name. Think about where you grew up. That would have been your biblical name. That would characterize you. But it's not just a place. It's a life. It's your past. Where do you come from? What's your past been? It may have been, some of you had a tough past. Some of you had a past of rejection. Some of you had a past of drugs. Some of you had a past of defilement, abandonment, of shame. You're in the natural, you come from your past. So that's the place you're from too. Some of you came from a place of sorrow, a place of divorce, a place of failing, a place of abuse, or another place. But the past affects you in the world. Your past causes your future. What you have been is going to affect what you are. That's how it works in the flesh. It affected the people who came from Galilee. When they went to Jerusalem, they said, you're from Galilee because you got an accent. Well, that was their physical thing. They had an accent from Galilee. It tells you your past is where you're from. It affects your life. Just as like a name stays with you. But here's the thing. If you're born again in God, you are no longer from the place you were from. You understand? You have a new hometown. You have a new name. Jesus was called Yeshua min Nitzeret. Try it. Yeshua min Nitzeret means Jesus of Nazareth. Nitzeret. That was his biblical surname. They said it all the time. It was this Jesus of Nazareth, the prophet Jesus of Nazareth. Now think about something. Think about this. What was the first name of believers in the Bible? They weren't called Christians. Yeah, the way was the way, but what were they called? They were called the Nazarenes. Or in Hebrew, the Notzrim. In fact, if you go to Israel today, you know what to this day, you know what they call Christians? They call them the Nazarenes. But now think about that. We were named after Messiah's surname. Our entire identity is from his surname, to describe the person, a characteristic of the person, the essence of the person. What does that mean? It means you are now to live with the nature of him, the essence of him. You got the name of him. The characteristic of it means you're living with his surname. You didn't come from Nazareth, but he did. You have his surname. You've got the power to live with his nature, to live holiness, live godliness, live victorious, because he did, and you're in him. You got the power to overcome. But it goes further than that. Nazarene is specifically the surname that shows you where he was from. Where everybody said, can any good come out of Nazareth? He was from Nazareth, and now you're called a Nazarene, though many of you, anybody been to Nazareth? Well, some of you, very few. How many of you have not been to Nazareth? Yet you're called Nazarene. You're called as if you were from Nazareth. You understand? You're all called. So what does that tell you? It means that in Messiah, you have the power to cancel out your old fromness. You used to be from here. Messiah cancels that out. So you have the power to nullify all the bad of the past. You're not of that anymore. You're a Nazarene. You're from a place you never have been before. That means you've got the power to live by his past, not your past. You have the power to be free of your past, whatever it was. And you know, people come into salvation and they still carry all sorts of stuff. You don't have to, but some people never get over it. And then there's the other people who do get over it because they learn this and they become real change people. What it means is whatever your past was, it does not have to determine your life anymore. It doesn't have to limit you anymore. It doesn't have to influence you anymore, because you are now given his past, Nazarene, his origin. And what's his ultimate origin? It's heaven. Where did he come from? Heaven. What does that mean? You've got his origin, meaning you are now to live as if you were from heaven. Where he says you're not of the world anymore. You are born from where? Above. You've got a new origin. See, whatever your past is affects your future, but if you have a new past, you got a new future. It's as if, imagine this. Imagine you had only known a perfect past. Imagine if you had known no sin, no rejection, no abuse, no abandonment, no defilement, no anything darkness of this world. You didn't know it. All you knew was perfect love, beloved child of the Father, like he did. Now you have the power to live. It says, what does it say? Live your life how? As beloved children. They said, but I wasn't a beloved child. I never felt like a beloved child. It doesn't matter. It says live as if you were. Even from God. It means now you've got the power to have a new, if you have a different past, it changes who you are now, and it changes what your future's going to be. Where you've got the power to live every moment from God. From love. What does that mean? From love. Every action, I want to do it from him. Yeah, I do not anymore have a name that is linked to abuse. I am not defined by abuse anymore. Even if I knew it, I am not of it. I am not a victim anymore. I'm not an angry, bitter person. I'm not someone who's mistreated. That flesh may have been, but I am not of that anymore. I am of the Father. I am a Nazarene. I have his past. Perfect love. I am no longer that. But you have to choose it. Are you going to live your life from Hackensack, from Newark, from the Bronx, or are you going to live your life from heaven? Which is it? You're no longer, I don't belong. That shame was there, but I don't belong to it anymore, and it doesn't belong to me because it's not of him. He took it away. He took my past that I could have his past. I'm not even from the situation I'm dealing with. See, one of the problems is we live our lives reacting to everything in every situation. And you got a problem, so you become, you have trouble, so you become troubled. You're living from the situation. Well, I don't have to live from that because I'm not from the problem anymore. I'm from the answer. I'm from Him. I am from Him to live every life, every moment. Imagine. That means you have to reject what is not of God. You reject whatever you had in your past, you lift it up to God, let it be cleansed, and now, Lord, I am your child. I reject the rejection. I reject the rejection. I am abandoning the abandonment. I don't know where this is going. This is just coming here now to me here. But that goes. It goes. I'm angry with I hate the hate. Hey, just turn everything. I can cut it off by the power of Messiah. That's why He died. That's why He came. That's why He was Yeshua, Messiah, son of Adam, so we, children of Adam, can become son of God. We are now John of heaven. You are Carol of heaven, James of heaven, Maria of heaven. Live like it, and you'll have an eternal surname. You will be called the one who got up, the one who rose, the one who persevered, the one who became righteous, the one who became loving and pure and victorious, and who was more than a conqueror, and who overcame everything in their life by the power of God. You've known your first name for a long time. Now you got a new last name, an eternal name. Your last name is heaven. Amen.